Hello, welcome to another tutorial. In today's tutorial, I'm going to be teaching you step by step how to cut and sew a IRO and BUBA with a V neckline. I'll also be teaching you how to go about the round neckline and also if you are making it with a lace material. So if this is what you're interested in, you want to click on the like button, continue watching this video, subscribe to this channel, turn on your notification bell, give your comment, and let's get started. So these are the fabric I'm going to be using for this style. So I have 6 yards of Ankara here, and I also have half yard of velvet sequence. So I'm going to be using this velvet as a design on the boba. So this is 6 yards. So the first thing you are going to be doing is to cut out the wrapper, which is the IRO. So for standard IRO and boba, the IRO measurements you are going to be using is 2 yards and 10 inches, 2 yards and 12 inches, or 2 yards and 15 inches, depending on how wide your client is. So for this client I'm making for, I'm going to be using 2 yards and 15 inches because it's a bit wide. So what I'm going to do is to measure 2 yards. So I'm going to be picking 2 yards from this now, and then I'm going to be measuring the 15 yards, the 15 inches. So now I'm going to take my tape and measure out 15 inches. So after measuring out 15 inches, I'm going to be cutting it out from the rest of the fabric. So this is the 2 yards and 15 inches. So if this were to be a lace material, I'm going to be using this length is enough for the IRO, because lace material, the length is usually longer than that of Ankara. But this is Ankara, it is short. So this is going to be short for a long IRO, because you know when you are tying wrapper, you need to fold some in before you tie it. So that is why it's going to be short. But if you don't want your wrapper to be long, so the length of this Ankara is okay. But if you want a long wrapper, then you have to add additional fabric to the upper part of this wrapper, of these 2 yards and 15 inches that you cut out. So the length of what you are going to be adding is going to be around 8 to 12 inches. And the width is going to be the same that you cut out for this wrapper, which is 2 yards and 15 inches. So we are not going to be cutting that out yet. We are going to cut the buba and sleeve first before we cut the additional part to this wrapper. To cut the buba, you are going to place your fabric like this, and then you are going to be using the M this way. You are going to match the M together this way, and then you are going to spread it out. So this is going to serve as the length of the buba. But when you measure this out, it's not so long. So this is about 23 inches. So if your client's buba length is not up to 23 inches, you can fold it this way. You can also fold it this way if you are using a lace fabric, because the lace fabric is usually longer, has a longer length than that of Ankara. So if you should fold a lace fabric like this, you are going to be getting around 25 to 26 inches. So that is going to be enough for your buba length. So when you are folding with a lace fabric, after folding it into two like this, then you are going to fold it again this way. So this way you have already folded it into 4, and you are going to be cutting the front and the back together this way. So all you need to do is just to cut out the neckline at this angle. And you can also use this method, fold it this way if your buba length is less than 23. But for this person that I'm sewing for, the buba length is 24. So I cannot fold it that way. So instead, I'm going to be folding it this way. I'm going to be using the yard length to fold it. So I'm going to be folding it. This printed part is where I'm going to be using for my length. So I'm going to be folding it into 2. So fold it into 2 this way. If your length is longer, if your buba length is longer than 23 inches. So after folding it into 2, I'm going to turn it this way and then cut out the excess. So this is what I have for my length. I have 25 inches here. The actual buba length is 24, and I added 1 inch M allowance. So after folding it into 2, you are going to be folding it into 2 again. So this way you have folded it into 4. So this is going to be the width, and this is going to be the length. So now the next thing you are going to be doing is to determine how wide your buba is going to be. So you are going to divide the bust measurement into four. After dividing the bust measurement into four, you are going to be adding 1 inch to 1.5 inches is allowance. So if you don't want the buba to be big, you are going to add 1 inch is allowance. But if you want it to be more free, you are going to be adding 1.5 inch is allowance. So for this client, the bust is divided by 4 is 11 inches. So I'm going to be adding 1.5 inch seam is allowance because I want the buba to be free. Then 11 plus 1.5 is allowance. That will give me 12.5. And then I'm going to be adding 1 inch extra for the seam allowance. So that's going to be giving me 13.5. So it is 13.5 that I'm going to be using for the width of this buba. But I don't want this buba the side. You can see that on the side there is a design there. So this design, I don't want it at the side because it's not going to be on the second side also, so it's going to look awkward. So I'll just trim that design off before I mark out my 13.5. So after trimming it, I can now fold my 13.5 width. So I'm going to use my tape and make sure that you have 13.5, and when you have that, you can trim off the excess. So after doing this, next thing is to mark out the neckline. So for a standard buba, the neckline is 3.5 by 3.5 if you are using a round neckline. But if you want it smaller, you can do 3 by 3. You can do 3.5 by 4, 3.5 by 5, depending on how wide you want the neckline to be. But for me, I'm going to be cutting a V neckline. So I'm going to be using 3 inches by 7 inches. So I'm going to mark 3 inches this way, and then I'm going to come down by 7. So V-neck can be very tricky. So if you make it wider than 3, it might be very wide on your client's neckline, just to be on the safe side. So I'm using 3 by 7. So I'm going to place my ruler this way and connect it in a V shape. Then I'm going to be cutting it out. So this is what the V neckline look like. So the next thing I'm going to be cutting now is the facing. So I'm going to be using the velvet sequence for the facing. So I'm going to fold the velvet sequence into 4, just like the way I folded my buba. So what I use for the length is 11, and the side I have 8 inches here. So after folding it into 4, so you can see that it is the closed part that I'm going to be placing on the closed part of the buba also. So the upper part, the shoulder part is all closed. So that is what I'm placing on my making sure that the closed part is also at the upper part of my velvet also. So I'm going to pin it together like this, and then I'm going to be tracing out the V neckline. So after tracing this out, I'm going to remove the pins and then bring it out. So now what I'm going to do now is to mark 3.5 all the way down, tracing the V neck. So I'm going to be marking 3.5. I'm going to mark 3.5 this way too, and I'm going to be using my ruler to connect this shape. So just connect it down like this. So after connecting it, I'm going to be trimming it out. So this is what the facing is going to look like. So the next thing now is to cut out the sleeve, the buba sleeve. So when you are taking your sleeve measurements for your buba, you're not going to take it the way you take your regular sleeve measurements. What you are going to do is to place your tape at the center of your neckline, and then you are going to place it across your shoulder down to where you want your sleeve to be, either at the elbow or at your wrist. So that's how you are going to take the measurement. So for this client, the sleeve measurement is going to stop me somewhere after the elbow, and the length is 23 inches. So I'm going to place my tape here. This is going to serve at the center of the back neck. So here I have 13.5 already. So what I have, I'm going to subtract 13.5 from 23 inches. So what I have left is 9.5. So it is the 9.5 that I'm going to be using for the sleeve length. I hope you understand. So now you are going to fold your fabric like this into two, and then you are going to be folding it into two again. So that means you are going to be folding it into four, just like you fold your fabric while cutting your buba. So now I want the design here at the lower part to be at the hem of my sleeve. So if your fabric is having a design, you want to watch out for that. So now after folding it like this, I already know that the length is 9.5. So now you are going to determine how wide you want your buba sleeve to be. So for buba sleeve, we usually make it like 10 inches. That's on fold, 10 inches or 11 inches or 12 inches. So when you make it 11 inches, by the time you sew it, it's going to be 10 inches. If you make it 12 inches, by the time you stitch it by 1 inch, you are going to be left with 11 inches. But for this buba, I want it to be wide. The clients want a wide buba sleeve because this is short. It's going to be stopping somewhere below the elbow. So I'm going to be making this 14 inches so that by the time I stitch it by 1 inch, I'm going to be left with 13 inches. So now I'm going to be cutting out the length. We already said that the length is going to be 9.5. So I'm going to add 1 inch extra to that for the hemming allowance, stitching allowance. So that's going to be 10.5 because I'm going to be using velvet to turn the sleeve part. So that's why I'm adding 1 inch. But if you're not using anything to turn the sleeve part, so that means you are going to be hemming the sleeve. So instead of adding 1 inch, you are going to be adding 3 inches, and you are going to be using 2 inches to hem the sleeve. But I'm going to be using the velvet to turn the sleeve, so that's why I'm just adding just 1 inch. So this is the sleeve that has been cut out. We already cut the buba also and the wrapper. So what we are going to be cutting out is the addition that we are going to be adding to the upper part of the wrapper. So this is what I have for the addition. I cut out 12 inches in length, and I'm having 2 pieces here because my fabric is not enough to cut out the 2 yards and 15 inches. So I'm going to be joining it together to give me that 2 yards and 15 inches, and the remaining one I'm going to be cutting out the excess. So I'm going to be using the remaining fabric for the head tie, and this is what I have left from the 6 yards. So we are going to be starting by sewing the addition that we are going to be adding to the wrapper. In Yoruba we call it alakun. So I'm going to be joining these two together. I'm going to place the right side on the right side, and I'm going to be stitching on the wrong side. So I'm going to stitch it by 1/2 inch. So after stitching it by 1/2 inch, I'm going to spread it out like this. Then I'm going to be folding this in like this to conceal the rough edge. So I'm going to fold it in like this, and I'm going to be stitching it on one side of the wrapper. So I'm going to stitch it down like this. So after stitching it down, this is what it looks like. You can see how neat it looks, and this is what it looks like on the right side. So now I'm going to be bringing the wrapper itself, and I'm going to be joining this to the upper part of the wrapper. So I'm going to face the right side on the right side, and I'm going to be stitching it together by 1/2 inch all around, and when I'm done, I'm going to cut off the excess. So this is it. I'm done stitching, and I also folded it in just like I folded the attachment to the upper part so that I can have a neat finishing there. So on the side here, on both sides, you are going to be folding it by 2.5 inches. After folding by 2.5, you are going to be folding in 1/2 inch. Then you are going to be stitching it all the way down. So to make it easier for you, it's better for you to pin it, and I'm going to be doing the same thing to the second side also. So this is the buba. What we are going to be doing now is to flip this to the wrong side. So after flipping to the wrong side, I'm going to bring the facing, and I'm going to be placing the facing on it. I'm going to arrange the facing properly so that it's going to match the neckline exactly. Now I'm going to be pinning it all around. So because this fabric is stretchy, it's very important to pin it closely so that it's going to be easier for you to stitch. So I'm going to be stitching it all around the V shape, and after stitching it I'm going to be notching it all around, and then I'm going to be flipping it to the right side. So now I'm going to flip it to the right side. After flipping it, I'm going to make sure to pin it all around so as to put it in place. And after pinning it, I'm going to be hemming it. I'll fold it in and then hem it on. I'm going to be top stitching it all around. So I've also gone ahead to cut this. I'm going to be using this for the design. It's a square, so it's 5 inches all around. So I'm going to be making it as a design on this buba, and I'm going to be placing it like this. So I'm also going to be pinning it down as well, and I'm going to be folding it on the edges and top stitching on it. So after doing this, I'm going to be working on the sleeve. So this is the 2 sleeve that we cut out. We cut it out on fold. So I'm going to be spreading it out this way, and I've also gone ahead to cut out this velvet. So it is 4 inches in width, and the length is the same length with the sleeve that I have here. So I'm going to be placing it at the edge of the sleeve. I'm going to be placing it on the wrong side. So I'm going to be stitching it by 1/2 inch. So I'm going to be pinning it all the way downwards so that it's going to be easier for me to stitch because of the texture of the fabric. So I'm going to pin it very close to the edge. So I'm going to be stitching it by 1/2 inch. So I'm already done stitching it. What I'm going to do now is to turn it to the right side. So after turning it to the right side, I'm going to pin it down so that, because I'm also going to be folding the edge in and top stitching on it, so for that to be easy for me to do, I'm going to have to pin it all the way down. So go ahead and pin yours also all the way down. Then after pinning, you are going to be folding it in, and then you are going to be top stitching on it. So while folding it in, you are going to be removing the pin as you are folding or as you are top stitching it. So you are going to be removing the pin gradually. So I'm done folding in, I'm done top stitching. This is what it looks like. So now I'm going to fold it into 2. So fold your sleeve into 2. When you fold it into 2, then you are going to be stitching it by 1 inch all the way down. So after stitching it by 1 inch, this is what it's going to look like. Then you are going to take your tape and measure what you have for your round sleeve. So here I have 13 1/4. So make sure you get an accurate measurement. So what you measure there exactly is what you are going to be using on your buba. So now fold your buba to the wrong side and then place it properly. Then you are going to be pinning it together on both sides. So now what you mark on your round sleeve, which is 13 1/4 in my case, so I'm going to be measuring that on this buba here. So you are going to measure it from the shoulder part to where it stops. So I marked 13 1/4. So this is where the 13 1/4 stops, and I've just chalked that point. So from below that point, you are going to be marking 1 inch, which you are going to be using for the stitching allowance. So you are going to mark that on the side below the 13 1/4 inches that you mark. Then from the lower part, you are going to measure 5 inches upward, because there is going to be a slit at the lower part. So that 5 inches is going to be what is going to be your slit. So now I'm going to connect this 1 inch together like this, and I'm going to be doing the same thing to the second side here. So I mark 13 1/4 here, mark 1 inch for the stitching allowance, then come up by 5 inches from the lower part and then connect this. So I'm going to be stitching this on my sewing machine. So after stitching, you bring the sleeve like this. So you can see the sleeve is on the right side and the buba is on the wrong side. So this part that you have stitched, that you stitch the sleeve, where there is stitch on the sleeve is going to be, you're going to be placing it on the lower part. So you're going to tuck the sleeve in into the buba like this. You can see what I am doing. So that 13.5 inches that you mark, that is why it's important that you mark accurately what you have for your round sleeve. You are going to tuck it in like this. So after tucking it, you are going to make sure that it's sitting properly, and where you have stitch, when you have joining, is facing the lower part there. So you are going to bring it together to hold it in place. So what you are going to be doing now is to stitch it together at this armhole area. So this is what we are going to call the armhole now. So you are going to stitch it by 1/2 inch just to hold the sleeve in place. So you are going to take it to your machine and stitch it. You are going to reverse it so that the stitch can be tied. So now I'm done stitching it by 1/2 inch. So you can see that it's holding the sleeve in place. So what you are going to do next is to open it up like this. You can see I've opened up the stitching allowance. Then you are going to be stitching from one end to the other. So you are going to start from this end, and you are going to stitch it all the way from here all the way to the second end, and you are not going to cross the line. Make sure you do not cross the line. So I'm done doing that. This is what it looks like. So when I started here, I tighten it, and when I ended the stitch, I also tighten it, and I make sure I did not cross the line. So please do not cross the line. So that is how to go about the sleeve of buba. So you can see what it looks like after turning it to the right side. So if you did not cross the line, it's going to look exactly like this. It's going to give you an issue if you cross the line. So I'm going to be fixing the second part of the sleeve, and then I'm going to be working on the lower part. So this is the lower part, the slit we have at the lower part of the buba. I'm going to be folding it in like this, and then I'm just going to spread it out like this. After spreading it out, I'm going to fold this in like this, and then I'm going to be stitching it all the way up. Then I'm going to be crossing it to the other side. I'm going to fold the other side like this, cross it to the other side, and bring it down. So I hope you get what I explained there, and that is exactly what I'm going to be doing to the second part also. Then after doing that, I'm going to fold this lower part twice. I'm going to fold it tiny. You're not going to fold it so much, and I'm going to do the same thing to the second side also. So thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next. Bye.